Frampton Comes Alive. In the history of recording music, no one sold an album that sold this many millions of copies. Well, let me tell you about it because I was there. Not only was I there, I was standing on stage with my friend Kristen Olson, and I invited her to come to the show, and she said, "Oh, Richard, I'm tired of going to concerts. I'm too old for that. My last show I ever saw was the Grateful Dead." And I said, "Kristen, we're not going to be in the crowd. We're going to be on stage. This guy's a friend of mine." And she said, "Really? I won't be jostled around and stepped on?" I said, "No, you'll be standing on the stage when Frampton plays this concert." She said, "Oh, well, that's different." So we go to the show, we're ushered up the ramp, we're standing on the side of the stage. I'll never forget this because he kept looking over at me like this to the left. And Chris and I are standing there, the show goes on, and the show is just magical, as people have witnessed from the millions that have witnessed from having the album. And every once in a while, Peter looks at me and like, "How am I doing?" And I'm going, "Oh my God, this is incredible." One song after another, the crowd is going crazy. Finally, when the show is over and we're applauding and people are starting to move out of Winterland, Peter's toweled off. He comes over, he says, "So how'd you like the show, Rich?" I said, "Oh," I was speechless. I really couldn't. I said, "Peter, it was just, of all the shows I've ever seen you do," and I had seen a lot of them, this just was over the top, magnificent. I said, "But it's just so sad. It's too bad that this music is now going up, up, up into the atmosphere, and we'll never hear it again." And Peter looked at me and said, "What are you talking about? Wally Heide's truck is behind us, and they recorded the whole thing." "Oh my God!" He said, come on, Richie, come on, Kristen, we're going to go listen." So after this exhausting concert, emotionally exhausting, we went back and listened to it again, the whole thing. So now we can fast forward to months and months afterward, where Jerry Moss, my favorite record company, of A&M, Alpert and Moss, two wonderful men that only signed artists and always gave them a good deal. Whether it was, if they wanted to break up with their contract, they'd just shake hands. I've heard that from so many artists. Anyway, Jerry calls me and he says, "I'm coming to town and I was called to listen to Peter Frampton's album that you happened to see." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I want you to come with me. He's invited me to Electric Lady and I want you to go with me because you were there. And if there's anything that I should know before I get there, you can fill me in." And I thought, oh yeah, there's something. Yes, I'd like to fill you in, because at some point Peter called me up and he said, "Rich, my manager D'Anthony doesn't want me to bring up that there's enough music on here to have a double album." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, he told me, "Don't do it, it won't sell. Single albums, the only thing, it won't, just that's it. Don't bring this up. What should I do? I said, oh, really? So with that in mind, when Jerry Moss came to town, and Jerry loved to go to Elaine's, which was the restaurant to go to for all of the book people, the TV people, everybody hung out at Elaine's. And the food there was terrible. And I said to Jerry one time, why do all you authors, but he said, Rich, it's the place to hang out, to be seen. So we used to go there once in a while. In fact, I bumped into Elaine sitting at the bar one day, and I said, hi, I'm Rich Totoian from A&M. She said, hi, I'm Elaine. And I said, you know, I don't get it, Elaine. The food in this place sucks. And she started laughing. She said, yeah, I know, but somehow I cornered the market on all these stars coming in here. I said, well, good for you. So anyway, when Jerry would come to town, before we'd go to Elaine's, in the afternoon, he'd pop into my office. And oh, the buzz was, the boss is here, the boss is here. And he'd knock on my door. He'd say, Rich. I'd say, Jerome. That's what I used to call Jerry. He said, you want to go get a couple of Nathan's hot dogs? 2 blocks away was Nathan's hot dogs. And he was an East Coaster. Jerry grew up in Philadelphia before he formed A&M Records. He told me one day he was sitting in Philadelphia watching the Rose Bowl game, Rose Bowl parade, and we're all shivering in the East Coast, and he's seeing all these people in their shorts, and sun is shining, and he said to himself, I gotta get out of Philadelphia, I'm going to LA. And that's how he started A&M Records, when he bumped into Herb Alpert. So he comes in, we go and we have a couple of hot dogs. And he always would say, those were delicious. Do you think we could have 2 more? I'd say 2 apiece. He'd go, yeah. I said, sure. So now, while we're having our hot dogs and licking our chops and sitting there and having a beer, I tell him the story. I said, I got to tell you something. Peter's in a quandary about this and he doesn't know what to do. And he said, what's that? So I tell him, D'Anthony doesn't want him to bring up the fact that there's enough music on here for a double album. And he said, well, you were there. What do you think? I said, Jerry, there's plenty of music on there for a double album. He said, okay, well then you come with me tonight to Electric Lady. That was Jimi Hendrix's recording studio. And we'll listen to it together. I said, okay. So we go to Electric Lady, everything's set up. They know the big kahuna from A&M Records is going to be there, and Peter's all excited, plays one song. Jerry's sitting there with his eyes closed. All the other guys are behind the glass. So this went on and on and on. Next song, next song, next song. Finally, when he had finished one side, actually, he said, well, that's it. Like, that's enough for a single album. And Jerry said, don't you have any more? I think we should have a double album. And Peter looked at me and gave me this look that was like, you told me, good for you. It was just, it was beautiful.
I wonder how you're feeling.
And there came the album.
Yep.
That we all know.
Right.
It was the ubiquitous Frampton Comes Alive album.
Yeah.
And for so many of us, it came out of nowhere, even though he had worked so hard to get to that point.
That's right.
But suddenly,
Yeah.
we all knew him and loved him.
And he had shared with me earlier on that he owed A&M Records thousands and thousands of dollars. And I was so naive. I said, well, why do you owe them so much? He said, Rich, who do you think pays for me to go out on the road? That's when I didn't realize that record companies were like banks. The record company paid for the artist to go on the road, and then hopefully if the artist made a successful career, they would recoup the money, and then an A&M would spend it on another artist that's trying to come up. That's how it worked. That's how it worked.
Wow.
When he said, well, I owe your company thousands of dollars, I said, I thought your manager pays. He goes, hell no. My manager calls A&M and says, Peter needs a new car. Peter needs a new guitar. Peter needs this. Peter needs that. Steve Marriott, the Anthony man Steve Marriott, lived in Nassau. He called Jerry Moss and said, Steve Marriott needs a new Ferrari, or whatever it was, some really exotic car. He drove it around for a week or two and busted it, ran into a tree. So Dee called Jerry up and said, he needs another one. And Jerry gave him the money. And I used to say to Jerry, how does this work? And he said, well, sometimes it works very well, and other times we end up in the hole. But I was with Rick Wakeman one time, who's another famous A&M artist. I was with Kevin. We were backstage at a Who concert, and Rick Wakeman came up to me and he said, Rich, those were wonderful years, those years with A&M. And I know you were there and I was there. He said, and I didn't understand at that time why I had to sign a contract with A&M Records. He said, I was young and full of piss and vinegar. And he said, Jerry and Herb said, sign this and you're gonna make 3 albums or 4 albums with us. I forgot. And he said, I was young. I was saying, why do I want to be tied down with you guys for all that time? And Jerry said, well, because the first album, we're gonna lose money for sure. The second album, because no one's heard of you in America. The second album, probably we're going to lose money. The third album, maybe we'll break even. The fourth album, hopefully, is going to explode and we'll get all our money back and you'll be a star. And he said to me, you know what? I didn't understand that. I sure understand it now. Those 2 guys were brilliant. A&M.
Cool story about how the business worked.
Yeah.
You also mentioned to me a story where the same gentleman who didn't believe in the 2-record release was the one who told Peter that having the same lawyer was okay.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about that story.
Peter called me up one night. He said, I want to get rid of my manager. I said, okay. Why? He said, well, first of all, I know that if I try to get rid of him, it's going to cost me $1 million. So why do you want to get rid of him? He said, because everything I do, he's against. Everything I want to try, he's against. He doesn't like the relationship I have with you. I said, well, you got to talk to your lawyer. He said, well, I feel funny about that. And I said, what do you mean you feel funny about it? He said, well, my lawyer and Dee's lawyer are the same lawyer. I said, well, how could that be? Why would you want to have the same lawyer? He said, well, that's what I asked Dee, and Dee said, oh, it'll be great. We'll just keep it in the family. I said, Peter, let me ask you this. Who do you think, by keeping this in the family with this lawyer, who do you think he's going to be loyal to? Some little pipsqueak like you that's trying to get out of his contract? Or Dee, who manages all these other rock and roll bands and is a heavy in the industry? So I don't know what happened there, but he got rid of him finally.
Well, you were a good friend to him, clearly, which
Yes.
is why just a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
when we went, where did we go? Let's talk about that.
Mohegan Sun. I contacted you and told you that Frampton's doing his farewell tour
Right.
and that we should go see him and that he's going to be playing at Mohegan Sun on the Monday, Labor Day. Potentially we could get backstage to see him. You then contacted Mary Beth, and then she contacted you and said it's all set. And she gave us the extra passes so that Dale and we
Right.
could all go. And what we didn't know was there all these people were lining up to go backstage. And what we didn't know was when Sage came and got us, she brought us towards with all those people and brought us, and then she said, now you stand over here. She said, we're going to bring you in first.
Yeah.
And then we went in and it was, hugs. And,
There was-
yeah, he gave me
hadn't
a
seen
big
him in what,
hug.
40 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And we
remember going to his house in the early 80s. That's the last time that I remember seeing him.
Yeah.
And you showed him the pictures of him with Scott Muni and him with Bill Graham.
Right.
The day in the park that they did.
Well, I know for me, having not been here for this long history that you all share, But going to see this concert was really great. So first of all, the show was fantastic. I mean,
Yes.
he played music from everything that he's done, which was really cool. So it was a wide variety of genres.
You said it's my year. Wasn't true then. Can't go wrong.
And he was so warm and personable, and so friendly and great and funny. And you know, at one point he's telling so many great stories, like you're doing now. He's telling these stories in between the songs.
His stories are rich with details, and like any of us, he pauses for a moment to recall a detail. And he made a joke about that. He looked at the audience and he said, "Hello, my name is Kevin." And the audience just roared. And later on, in perfect comedic timing, when he was pausing to recall another detail in a story, someone in the audience screamed out, "We love you, Kevin!"
And afterwards, in that backstage time when we were all together, he said, "I think the reason I chose the name Kevin was subconsciously, I knew I was going to see Kevin tonight." We found out later, because we could see the room really filled with 50 people.
Right.
The fact that Peter Frampton was so happy to see Rich and to see Kevin,
Right.
and you would have never known that he was under the pressure of needing to go down the hall and see everybody. You would think that all he was really caring about at that moment, because that's all he was caring about, was reconnecting with
That's
a friend.
a good point.
Right. What a lovely, lovely man. I think all those things that you did for him, all the ways that you've defended him and cared for him and stood up for him, and he remembers.
Sure he does.
So it was
And the
nice.
thing is that I've always been known as being passionate for the music. And when I heard this guy's music, and then I fell in love with him personally.
Yeah.